Hey guys, Josh Porter again here with Building Integrity. As you can notice, or as you may have noticed, my location has changed. I am now in another hotel, and my desk has now become an ironing board. So if the video shakes or the screen shakes, I apologize. I wanted to touch on a couple things that you guys have been giving us a lot of feedback. I can only pick and choose and work with so much at a time, and working with my staff and some of their recommendations on what to focus on. That's kind of what I'm going to do on this video. What I have seen in the news a lot, and I just saw it again tonight on both mainstream media and local media coverage, is they keep talking about the 2018 report mentioning the pool deck, ramp area, and garage being severely damaged. So I'm going to show you where that is located and what that's all about. I've also seen a lot of people commenting saying that the lower garage level would fill up with seawater, sometimes a foot or a foot and a half or two. I don't know if this has been substantiated with any hard evidence, but there's a lot of people saying the same thing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit about and what that could possibly have to do with the damage that could have caused this collapse. And then the last thing we're gonna do is, I think you guys really find it interesting. We're gonna go back to the Subsidence study that was done by the FIU professor, and we're gonna watch a video of their statement that they released. I think it was about 2 days ago, and I'm just gonna show you a little clip of that, and I'm gonna show you some snippets of his report that I think you guys are gonna find really interesting. All right, so let's just jump right into this real quick. Okay. So let's go back to this report. All right, so here's the 2018 report. This is what all of the news media outlets keep pointing back to, is that several sizable spalls were noted in both the top side of the entrance drive ramp. I'll show you where that is. And the underside of the pool / entrance drive / planter slabs. So I'll show you where this area is, and I think you guys will find it really interesting. If you look at the 1979 construction drawings, and I'm going to try to zoom in here without shaking too much. You'll notice that this word here says ramp. So you enter the building, the underside of the building, from the street, from the north side of, or the top side of this picture, but it does end up being the north side of the building too. So you enter from the north side of the building, you come down the ramp, and then once you're down at this level, you're pretty much at the parking level, and you can go anywhere you want in the parking garage, all the way back around. Now, if you come back around, you'll see a wall here because that's the side of the ramp. So they're talking about this ramp being severely damaged and holding water, and I highlighted these columns in orange. So these gray dots here, these are columns. Now these columns are what we refer to as column lines because they go all the way up the whole full height of the building. So what's really interesting is, if you remember in that first video, we showed the facade falling in the section of the facade. I've got that here. Okay, so in the first video, and I'll explain these highlights real quick. The green area is the portion of the building that's still standing. And again, we're looking at the 1979 structural drawings, and we're looking at them from the top, like a bird's eye view, right? So the green area is the portion of the building that's still standing. The red area that's shaded in red is the area that started falling first. The area that's shaded in orange is the part that immediately followed afterwards, and then the part that's shaded in yellow fell a few seconds later. So in order for the portion in yellow, you got to think backwards. In order for the portion in yellow to have remained those extra couple seconds, it is very likely that this column right here, if you can see my cursor, was stable. So what would have been required in order to initiate this fall is a minimum of these three columns giving out and having a problem. But what's really interesting is these three columns, if you look back at the ground floor plan, the garage floor plan, and I circled those same three columns, those three columns are located right here, okay? So these three columns in the ground floor would have had to have gone. Now, I'm not postulating theories of what I think. I'm just saying, I will just kind of bring up some things that some people have mentioned and asked about and talked about. One person asked, like, well, what if the columns were already kind of weak or compromised and somebody came home at 1:30, came down this ramp and hit that column? Is that a possibility, or hit both of these columns? I mean, yeah, that's a possibility. We just don't know at this point if that was the straw that broke the camel's back or not. But again, these three columns, possibly these three columns, But definitely we would see at least these three columns would have to be part of that initial collapse in order to see this portion of the building collapse first in that video. And again, those three columns are recircled here, here, and here. And what's interesting about this is the part that you're not seeing, this white area right here. This is the amenity deck, the pool. We call them amenity decks, but it's the pool deck. So here's a picture of that. Highlighted in red are the three columns that I just had circled on the last drawing. And then here's the pool deck. And one of the things they cite in that report, if you remember, they mentioned the word planter boxes. And so if you look at these three columns, there's a planter box that goes right up against the column here. And the Google imagery is bad at this point, but there's another planter box right here. There's no planter box here at this column. But there are a planter box here and a planter box here, and the planter boxes were pretty severely criticized by the engineer in 2018 as being a major problem and a source of water leaking and water intrusion. The interesting thing about the planter boxes is they would have concealed the bottom 2 feet of those columns on this floor. So if the planter boxes weren't properly waterproofed, and if those columns were suffering severe corrosion damage inside the planter box area, right where my cursor's pointing, you really wouldn't ever know it unless you dug up the planters and investigated that. So that's kind of going to be a possible interesting thing that they may discover, that that's where the level of corrosion was, if that's even going to be possible at this point. The other thing, too, that was mentioned was the seawater. If seawater was getting into that basement floor, I'll go back and bring up that plan. So here's your parking garage. So if seawater is getting into here, and we're having like flooding, maybe seasonally, or as the tides rise or whatnot, but if water is getting into this and it's salt water, then the amount of damage, and when I say damage, I don't mean like necessarily cracking and spalling, but what I'm saying is carbonation and weakening of the concrete through the process called carbonation. But if you have standing water in this lower floor area, then and it could be aggressively damaging these columns depending on how long it sits there, and what type of and how much salt is in that water. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, but we have concrete piers and concrete docks and bridges that have concrete pilings that go into the water, and they don't suffer this kind of damage and stuff. Well, the interesting thing to note would be that those concrete columns, like take a bridge that goes over any of our bodies of water here in Florida, and you have the concrete columns. Those concrete columns, they do get, by the way, significantly repaired and replaced here and there. But more importantly, they have immense amounts of concrete cover, and the concrete that they use has a very low water to cement ratio. And what that means is that when they first make the concrete, it's a very dense concrete, and water can only penetrate that concrete very, very slowly. These columns in a typical condo building would not be designed with that type of high density, low porosity concrete, unless the engineer or architect specified it, which it's very, very unlikely that would happen. Okay, but yes, as far as could it be a contributing factor? Absolutely, that could also be a contributing factor. So you have the planter boxes that could be a contributing factor. You've got this saltwater intrusion in the ground floor that could be a contributing factor. And then the last contributing factor we're going to talk about is going to be the Subsidence report, and some things I think I just found interesting about it. So in their 2016 report, I just wanted to bring this up because I like the graphic in the report. Now, these are the reports put out, the Subsidence reports put out by the professor. I apologize, I cannot pronounce his name. It's Udowinski or Wadinsky or something like that. But in 2016, they put out a report, and it kind of showing the Miami Beach Barrier Island area. Okay, now if you can see my cursor here, this is generally where the location of Surfside is, and where this building Champlain Towers South is located at. Okay, and that's going to be important. But before we get to that, the other thing I wanted to explain to you too, looking at this map. So here's the Barrier Island. I'm kind of circling it with my cursor here, and let's see if I can draw on this real quick. Okay. So the Barrier Island is essentially here. Okay. Now, the east side of the Barrier Island is mostly built on bedrock. Now, I'm just taking that as information that was given to me by the FIU professor in his own interview, which I'll show you a clip of in a minute. I won't show you that clip, but he mentions that this is mostly bedrock. And then the west side of the Barrier Island is mostly wetlands. So they expected to see subsidence, which is that settling of land and buildings on the west side, but they didn't really expect to see it on the east side. But there was something unique about Surfside and about this building that I think you guys will find interesting. But I want to go ahead and play you the video now before we go on.
We saw several pockets of these subsidence. Most of them were in the western part of the city where we expected to see subsidence. There was unusual, the pocket we saw in Surfside, which was in the eastern side, which is known to be on a stable part of the city. Over there, we didn't expect to see subsidence. So we didn't pay too much attention to that. We just reported because that's what the data showed. And we said that it's occurred in this building, condominium building that is 12-story high. And we just reported that because the focus of the study was about land subsidence and not trying to analyze building damage or anything like that. So it's a byproduct of the analysis. We saw movement that happened in the 1990s, and we didn't pay too much attention to that. We just reported in the paper.
Okay, so let me bring up this again. Okay, so looking at the picture of the island, he was talking about that they found this oddity in the east side. And I'll show you that in their 2020 report, they actually show an infographic. All right, so I'm going to start at the south side of the barrier island. All right, right now, the Surfside and Champlain Towers South is not in this image. So I'm going to explain the image to you. All the green that you see, all these green dots are things that they found that moved roughly 0 millimeters per year. So they were stable properties. And you can see some of these yellow dots, like they circled here and they circled here. These yellow areas moved on an average of maybe -2 millimeters per year. And then the red lines aren't really well explained, but it looks like they maybe have mapped out some roads. And that those roads possibly had been settling as much as 4 millimeters per year, or I should say consolidating or subsiding, depending on how fancy you want to get with your terms. So, but if you look at this, on the east side, most of the barrier island is all in the green. But then as you pan north, you get a few little pockets, a little tiny bit of yellow, and then you got a lot of green, and then all of a sudden you've got this area right here. And it's a pretty decent size area that is yellow, and it's showing that -1.9 millimeters per year. Everybody who's been talking about on the news that you've been seeing that says, oh, it's the building was subsiding 2 millimeters per year. This is the report they got it from. This is the data they got it from. But the thing that's really interesting, and if, as you just saw the professor himself say, that it was an oddity that this would be settling, that this area and this building would be settling or subsiding 2 millimeters per year in an area that's known to be stable. So I thought that was really interesting, and I bring that up because this goes all the way back to my first video where everybody keeps saying, oh, don't worry about the subsidence, that doesn't mean anything, And my question is, and again, I'm not saying that this is my belief, but it's just another question that needs to be asked, is does this subsidence, being in an area that is traditionally stable over bedrock area, which he mentions earlier or elsewhere in that video that I didn't play, the part I didn't play for you, he mentions that it's over, that the east side is over bedrock. So does this then imply that there was some sort of breach in the bedrock? Perhaps there was some sort of sinkhole or excessive soil consolidation or soil washout issue. And then of course this raises the question going back to one of the news programs I saw was a gentleman who said that he had talked to the association attorney, and the association attorney had talked to the association's engineers who were on site, and they claimed, and so you're kind of getting a little bit of this telephone game, you don't know how much to believe or not, but on the news they said that they claimed that they saw a hole in the ground under the basement and it would look like a chasm, whatever that means. So is that a relevant piece of information or not, and does this relate to that? So those are going to be questions I think we will all have moving forward. And again, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this video, I mean, I have a lot of stuff I could talk about, a lot of stuff I can go over, but clearly I'm on vacation. I drove 5 hours today to get to our second location, and I've got a full busy week ahead of me this week, going out and doing things and enjoying the sights with my family. So I will try to bring you updates when I can, but I also don't want to present any information that I haven't sort of gone through and that I can't explain and that I can't bring you new information on or new insights on. So I'm not just going to make a video just to waste your time. Anyway, that's all for tonight. I appreciate it, and stay safe.